welcome to the coaching channel. And first of all, if you would like to introduce yourself and your official title, that'd be great.
Yeah. So I'm Stuart Purcell. I'm a consultant psychiatrist, and that means I studied medicine in Cape Town. I worked in the UK for a bit, went back to Cape Town, started to do psychiatry training, came to the UK, redid my psychiatry training here. And usually that would mean you do 3 years of general psychiatry work, then you specialise for another 3 years after that. So it's a mixture of medicine, mental health, and then you have a particular interest within that.
Mm. And what is your interest?
In keeping with my personality, it changes. Not in a hurry, but it's shifted.
Okay.
So I guess what's been an enduring interest for me is the relationships of people, how we manage ourselves, and that's taken the form. I've done quite a lot of therapy work and therapy training, and I've had a particular interest in people who, at least superficially, seem to be incredibly self-destructive. So people who get into terrible patterns of self-harming repeatedly and really, really struggle to believe that life can be different. So that cohort of people, I've spent a lot of that. I know pretty well. But as a psychiatrist, you cover a variety of things. So I've worked in inpatient settings, outpatient settings, and I have the joy of working in learning disabilities now. So people with an additional layer of complexity. You have epilepsy, schizophrenia, autism, mental health problems. So it's changed, it drifts, but the thinking and the theorizing around people, and that, I'll be explicit, my assumption is that all manifests or goes via our brains. So as a medic, I was interested in neurology and the brain. Everything we do interpersonally at least travels at some point through our brain. It's not through. So I'm interested in what goes on outside, how does that get played out through the inside?
Yeah.
And that's an enduring interest for me.
Well, when we spoke last week, I think we both agreed that would have been a good conversation to record.
Yes.
And one of the things that became apparent was that there is certain commonality between the tools that we both use, but they're used in different settings, and with people that have reached us from different places, or themselves being in different settings. Yeah. Because coaching automatically exists within the world of mental health, but it's not a clinical profession. Hasn't got that link to the medical side of things. In terms of comparing it to where you're coming from. But I love the idea of the beliefs that people have, because in coaching we do a lot to be interested in limiting beliefs. And working out where they come from and how they do or don't serve somebody, and also the layers. You said about layers in people, and how do you see them building up over time?
There's a mixture of things we spoke about, and I thought about it a fair bit, and I was both a bit flippant, but also very serious. In I don't believe there's anything new. So I do not believe that the fundamentals in one psychological therapy model, say cognitive analytic therapy, versus dialectical behavioural therapy, versus schema therapy, versus transference focused therapy, which are the worlds I kind of know, or psychodynamic therapy, or cognitive behavioural therapy. What really goes on when things are helpful are no different in my view. The language will speak to different people, a different therapist, a different patient, perhaps differently, and so a model is important in that regard. But what's actually going on, I don't believe is different, and I'm absolutely sure the same will be in the coaching world. I'm convinced that what you describe as beliefs, where do they come from, how are they maintained, what snags you, what frees you up, is going to be the same. Different language, different metaphors, but what you're getting at is going to be very similar. Of that I'm sure.
I would agree, and I think the how we overlap as professionals has something to do with me having worked with NHS patients for about 16 months, and when I encountered people that were referred to me by a GP, the GP wanted to know what else was going on. What was the driving reason behind this person being a frequent visitor? You know, having diabetes or depression or obesity, which are the three things I was brought in to actually affect. And what I found was that quite often I was the first person that people had opened up to and talked to about particular events in their life. There's a lot of trauma going on, and so this is where I learnt to be a coach, a kind of a trauma-informed coach. And at that stage, it was unofficial, just experiential. So I got to realise that maybe I can cross the boundary slightly into the world of therapy, and there were certain patients I could then walk towards coaching with, and ones I couldn't, and actually no, they needed to have therapy or counselling.
So I think your description, it makes sense to me in that I don't think the model's any different. So I think the more stuck people are and the more limited their repertoire of behaviours, the more difficult it is, and the less likely you are to be able to help that person as a sole practitioner. So as a coach, you often work as a sole practitioner. You see the person on your own, you may get supervision. There are therapists who will work as therapists as sole practitioners, and I think that works if you've got experience, if you've got a reflective space to think about it, and if you're working with people who demonstrably have a number of skills and aren't too stuck. Because they have a repertoire you can draw on. The analogy would be your toolbox has got a number of tools in. But if you only got a pickaxe and you're trying to fashion a nice piece of furniture, it's not going to be easy. Patients who, and I use the word patients because I'm thinking of particularly people who've got multi-morbidities, complexities, they don't do well in single practitioner models either. So dialectical behavioural therapy, for example, working with people who are multi-morbidities, lots of self-harming, really entrenched views that they're born to suffer, very hard to believe that they can make progress in life. They don't do well if you allocate to single practitioners. You function as a team. And that's because the person's pathology is very pronounced and it's going to play out interpersonally, and you as the therapist are going to be drawn into that person's script more quickly than they're going to be drawn out of their script into your script.
Right.
You are going to, over time, land up enacting some of the pathology that the patient brings relationally. And so you land up with therapist and patient either in tears or the therapist being extremely controlling. You must do this, you must do that, which usually leads to a rupture. And without the support of a team, we don't see that sort of person doing well in therapy. I think it's very harmful. Frequently, it can be very harmful to both parties. And that's the difference, Rob, is when I was thinking about it, it's not the model, it's the way it's done and the skill and expertise you get in working with that type of person, with that type of problem.
I totally agree. And so coaching is sought out, it is wanted, it is aspirational, and people select the coach. And I think that is a lot of the kind of filtering taken care of, which makes the two professions stand out to me, is that someone can think in an aspirational way. There aren't big anchors in their past that they are having to deal with, and it's like, right, I know I'm here and I want to go there, and how do I do that? But the way you described those types of patients, there are lots of other things going on which need that team.
Yes. And they need the therapist also to be, there are different skills, a bit like when you are doing your PT training. What you need, if you are relatively fit and well and you've kind of lost the motivation, or you hit a barrier, is very different language, different program to what goes on if you haven't managed to get off a couch for a long time. They're different. the emphasis is slightly different, and people get good at that. Some people are very good at working at this level, and other people are very good at working with people at a different level.
Yes. Yeah, they
needs to be acknowledged.
They can hand them over. So when you say about levels, there are PTs who I know, for example. So just to clarify for the audience, I used to be a personal trainer. So there are people I would hand my clients over to because they want to get involved in pretty serious powerlifting.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm more strength and mobility kind of specialist.
Yeah.
And I think it's knowing where when you're reaching the perimeter of your abilities. And I think this is what we said actually last time. I said any client or patient, let's say, is moving down their own river of their life, and they will encounter different people on the banks of their river.
Yes.
And I'm keeping my camp on my part of the bank, and you're on a different part of the bank.
Yeah, that's true.
And so they can do certain things within my setting, but then if we're reaching the point where actually they need something more than coaching, or maybe a different style of coaching that I can offer, I think it's then my professional duty to kind of help them, if they want me to help them find the next camp, the next professional, and say, actually, I think now you're ready for that.
Yeah. I mean, that's absolutely, I agree with you. The models we have help us a little with that. And so some models of therapy would be you need to be in supervision for a certain type of therapy with a certain type of client. And I think that helps you reflect and say, perhaps, as much as I can do. So how you coach and how you offer therapy, massive overlaps. But much of it boils down to you, the individual practitioner. So if I go and I think I was saying to you last week, if I go and get CBT therapy from James or CBT therapy from Roger, it's not the same thing.
No.
The CBT is the same. So we say, you need therapy. You need. It's not. People are saying you need to get help from another person who you hopefully will get on with, who can connect with you, who you can trust, who will have a framework for helping you think of things. That's really what coaching or therapy is about. We have these shorthands, go get therapy.
There's so much behind those words.
Yeah.
And this is why I say to people to give the profession and to give the professional a chance. Now, you can choose how long what duration or what number of visits the chance lasts. Because I have encountered people, especially in the NHS, who'd say, I tried therapy, I tried counselling, didn't work. Dogs around here. I tried therapy, I tried counselling, didn't work. And then when I say, well, how many sessions did you have? One. Well, okay. Now, my angle is that I coach men, and I think for men to open up, to choose to do that is a big step. And then if they have an experience which is maybe too challenging, or they don't get on with a professional, that's that attempt done and dusted with. And okay, well, I'm not going to do that again. And that's something that I'm working to help men get past. But I think coaching has an easier job than maybe therapy or counselling because it is aspirational, it is wanted.
Yeah. So there's a goal directed. So if we talk about men, which I'm also very interested in.
What's that?
I'm interested in men, the psychology of men, unsurprisingly. Paul Gilbert reckons there's three functions that kind of drive us: love, work, and war, and he calls them different things. People call it so relationships, mastery, and tasks, and threat. And I think men intrinsically know that they are seeking both something around what do you do. So if I met you for the first time, I would be saying things, Rob, what do you do? Kind of what do you do in life? And I'll be curious to find out what you do. And then I'll be saying, and kind of like, where's your connections? Who are you connected to? So we intrinsically ask little questions around how are you connected in life? To who are you connected? What do you do? But what I've seen in certain therapies is the doing bit gets a bit neglected, and it is often entirely relationship focused, which many men just don't find tolerable. So the people say things like, "Oh, you need to be loved just for who you are, just for who you are." And say, "That's fine. I do want to be loved for who I am, but I also want to be doing things. I want to be seen for what I do. I want to be helped to enjoy the things I enjoy doing. All people are entirely goal focused. What do you want to get?
Yeah.
And they forget about the cost, the integrity, and the cost on relationships. I think, from the description you gave of coaching, is you marry both of those. Yes,
and I heard a therapist this week describe that as destination addiction.
Oh, how interesting.
Or I called it acquisition addiction.
Yeah.
We're looking to acquire things, and not just tangible things, but results and that objective success that I think men are driven to. So my style of coaching is called coactive coaching.
Called
coactive.
Yeah.
There's a hyphen between the two words. So the co is about being.
Yeah.
And the active is the doing. And the hyphen is kind of where you want to be frequenting, and you're dancing between the two.
Yeah.
And I think men, when we just go, do, get, and that can be, am I successful at work? Am I earning enough? Am I providing for my family? And this, that, and the other. I liken men in that scenario to be the AA truck, the rescue vehicle that isn't having a service. So that scenario has a finite time frame, because something's going to happen to the AA truck. So then I help men go in the being and see the strength of it, and it takes a bit of vulnerability and empathy towards themselves, and just a different approach that they're not necessarily used to. It's like going slow, walking first so you can run later. That's the approach, and I think this approach is often overlooked, because coaching, because it's aspirational, can be seen as something that achieves goals, and it does.
Yes.
But I go in a slightly different direction first, and then help men revisit that, the being and the doing, repeatedly, to check in with, well, are they feeling how they want to feel? Are they able to turn up in life how they want to, whilst they do these things? Yeah.
I think if you can hold both of those in mind, and help people understand or connect with their values. How do I want to be as a father, as a friend, as a lover, as a colleague, and what do I want to be doing? Because I think you need both, and I get saddened when they get drawn or neglected. Those aspects get neglected.
Just so the audience knows,
people having a fantastic time, which is
a bunch of lads over having a great time. Yeah.
I wanted to come back to something you were saying earlier, because it took my mind off in a different direction about how do you find a coach, how do you find a therapist, and I wonder if we can just revisit that or think that through a bit.
Yeah, maybe to help people who are thinking of doing that. Yeah. I think, so in terms of my industry, it's unregulated. So anyone can call themselves a coach.
Yeah.
And I think people should be aware of that, because I've done a lot of training, and I'm a member of the International Coaching Federation. I'm supervised, certified, and that is very different to someone just deciding that they're a coach of something. What I like is that people want to help people and have an experience, and they think there's knowledge there that they can impart, but that isn't coaching. So coaching is a specific skill set where, and this is my belief, this is where you bring out of someone what already lies within but may be untapped as yet. You're not putting something into them, because that is advice or mentorship. And there's a real skill in the level of listening that you do as a coach, and how you enable someone to find the answers themselves. So first of all, I say if you're looking for a coach, I would look into the training somebody's done. But you have to get to that point first. How do you go about finding a coach? So a good place to start would be the International Coaching Federation, and they have directories of coaches in all the countries that they're present. That would be a really great start. You can, of course, look up a life coach in your local area, and you'll find Google reviews and Google searches. But if you do that, I would encourage people to then look into the training that person has done.
Yeah.
Now, how does that differ in terms of the kind of the problem there of coaching being unregulated? How does that differ to therapists?
So, in the NHS, that's largely taken care of, in that people will only be employed if they are registered. So you have different bodies that are registered, different psychotherapists, counselling psychotherapists, psychologists, psychiatrists. But it equally takes away from your choice.
Yeah, okay.
And I know plenty therapists who I would see for one thing and not for another. I know a few therapists who I wouldn't want to be in therapy with.
Right.
And I think that's true in all professions. So you can have the qualification, I think, is a necessary but not sufficient step. And there is something about when you meet people, do you connect? And I think we feel that very viscerally in our bodies.
Yes.
Do you connect with the person? Do you feel comfortable? Because if you don't, there's a lot of work to overcome that barrier.
Yes.
It can often be overcome with a bit of exploration. So if it's upfront early on, if you don't have a choice, for example, in the NHS, if somebody isn't comfortable, you've got to explore it fairly early on. It seems to me we don't quite connect, or there's some things getting in the way. It might be, I remind you of some South African racist or some, horror. Those things are often there. And but it requires additional work. And I think there's something, a real joy of connecting. You know it, you can feel it.
Yeah. I've had coaches who I wouldn't say I was comfortable with, but then I went to them to be challenged.
Yeah.
And I always felt I could work with them because I ended up working with them.
Yeah.
And I've had in my time probably 7 coaches that have coached me.
Yeah.
And they've all given me something different.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of one I've stayed with longer than any other. And there are reasons for that. But I think that's what I said earlier, was giving the profession a chance and giving yourself a chance, because for how long has anyone been experiencing something you don't want to experience? So how long are you going to give yourself to come out the other side? Now the former journey could be unconscious, subconscious, unconscious. But then the journey away from that to something else in terms of coaching is conscious. Yes. So the time frame can be shorter, but how much time are you going to give yourself? And I think part of that journey will be trying on a coach for size. The one thing that will help is a recommendation from somebody who's seen a coach.
Yeah.
So I would encourage people to ask around. You'd be surprised at people that have had coaching. Can anyone recommend a coach? I want to do these sorts of things. And then you can get recommendations, and then you can actually layer that with, what qualifications does this person have? What's their presence like online in terms of their website and testimonials, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So therapy would do the same. I've seen 3 therapists in my life. The second person I saw was a real struggle to connect with, but it was explicit why was it such a struggle. And being able to talk that through was extremely helpful, because often some of the struggle is the projection from me onto the therapist. So quite early on, you're starting to uncover what's unconscious. It's projected onto the therapist. The therapist is fairly neutral, but I have a very strong reaction to the therapist.
Right, okay.
But you need a therapist who is able to work with that. Yeah, but if I'm recommending therapists, or if I'm looking for a therapist, it is what you said. What's your qualifications? Also, what's your interest? Where's your passion? And you're looking for a degree of integrity. If, as a therapist, I'm seeing, so I would not take on somebody in a coaching aspirational role that's not my skill set.
No, of course, yeah.
And I would be upfront with somebody.
But as you said in the beginning, you said who you're coaching, who you're interested in, is change over time with you as a person as you change.
Yeah.
The kind of evolution. Like I talk about niches in coaching.
Yeah.
So I've developed my niche to be coaching men in their 40s and early 50s.
Yeah.
And they have a certain setting.
Yeah.
it's quite, sometimes it's when someone says, "Oh, I coach anyone." It's like, okay,
It's a stretch.
yeah,
It's hard.
yeah. There'll be a niche in there for that, even for that coach who says that. I think
Yeah.
there'll be a niche developing somewhere.
Yeah.
You'll be able to look at their clients and find commonalities
Yeah.
that they may not be aware of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I would agree with that.
What do you think? Bringing the kind of conversation back to men, what do you think are some of the top challenges for men in today's society, should we say?
I think men. So we'll start on a slightly more philosophical level, then kind of drill down. I think men have always battled with a real sense of. A big battle has been about exploitation and power imbalances, but also about just being irrelevant. So I think in a society you can get by with few men as a species, and you'll need women are intrinsically valuable, whereas men, unless you can do something, you don't have much value. So you could get by with a couple of men as long as you had, evolutionary speaking, you had women.
Okay.
I think as there's less for men to do, or as we are replaced, that sense of needing to do things becomes more pressing. And I think there's a sense for men we are facing, what are we going to do? What is our purpose?
Right.
I think the purpose and the connection about how we are with people has been lost, and I think that our challenge is to reconnect. We are valuable as people, not just for doing things, and I think we're going to have to reconnect with that, and men are going to have to reconnect with that. I think we're not great. I think of myself, not fantastic at putting thoughts, and I've had lots and lots of training. I work in mental health. My wife is just intrinsically better at it. It's unbelievable. Connecting for men, I think, is hard. Connecting with self. So what's really going on inside of me, having an emotional language, intrinsically connecting with it, reaching out and being vulnerable with somebody else is not something we're great at, I don't think.
No, we're not. I think it's an avenue we don't know is there.
Yeah.
And well, it's overgrown, but at least, you know,
I love that. It does need a bit of pruning.
Yeah.
That's very true.
One way I described this to a client was, I said, you've reached the boundary of where you're comfortable, and what lies ahead of you is a piece of land with really tall grass, and you don't know what's in there. You haven't used this skill set before. This way, and let's say we're talking about an emotional attachment to ourselves and being empathetic towards ourselves and being vulnerable. That is the representation of this grassy field.
Yeah.
Well, if you just walk a few steps in there, stand there for a bit, we're talking about graded exposure now, and just trying to be there, you can come back with evidence to the part of you that questions your ability to do that, and say, look, you can see my footprints in there, I've stood there. So next time you can go there and stand a bit longer, or maybe go a bit further, until eventually you have one of those paths you see in fields in the summertime, hard packed mud, people have been walking there a lot, and that's what you're trying to create for people, is to actually push into this zone that they're not used to.
Yeah.
And last time we spoke, we talked about the kind of that fragmentation of someone's character, of looking at different parts, and discovering there's just a room they haven't looked into yet. And it doesn't mean that men are weak if they do this, or they're lacking, or they're broken. It's actually a complete superpower, because it's just like I said before, it's the stone that hasn't been overturned yet, and there's something of value underneath.
Yeah, I think it's about picking up additional skills. Sometimes we think you need to put something down. They have the metaphor, you need to put something down to pick something up.
Yeah.
And I think that's, if you are frightened or you've been traumatized, that's a very problematic metaphor. And I think for many men that's problematic.
What about beliefs then? Can you put a belief down and pick another one up?
I think you can gather some more.
Okay.
I think there's lots of capacity. So I often talk about people, there isn't a need for you to stop being able to be powerful, aggressive. you don't have. I'm not telling you to let go of your spear. You may need another shield, or you may need a net. You may be able to draw people in along with you. Not that you have to give this up in order to get something else. We're not asking you to switch an entire way of being, but you do need to grow more aspects of yourself.
I think I was probably thinking more along the lines of, I didn't phrase it in the best way, but was challenging a belief rather than putting one down.
Oh yeah.
But what you're speaking of, I love, is that we're not questioning all those parts of you.
Yeah.
They've
served you well.
Because in coaching, my belief is, they're not broken. There's not anything missing. It's just we're going to amplify something they may not have seen before.
Yeah.
And you can, of course, keep hold of things like saboteur behaviour is very useful in the right setting. So I'm not looking to eradicate that. Yeah. This is the devil on people's shoulder, the inner critic. No, I'm not looking to eradicate that. I'm looking to find where it's great. Yeah. And that is that's as you said,
what we're talking about.
Keeping hold of your spear.
Yeah.
Fine. Yeah. And use it when it's actually useful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But accept that you're going to need to grow some other things. Yeah. Shine the light on other things. Try different things out, and that's tough. But what I do know about men my age, my colleagues, people I know, is often a little goes a hell of a long way. So I don't know that we have a very strong verbal culture. There's a lot that's unspoken. There's lots of gesture. There's lots of being together, but not necessarily quite so much dialogue. I
would agree. I would really agree. Actually, I was at a pub last night with some friends, and one person opened up a little bit about something, and I was more than happy, to talk about that. And I could tell, you could clearly see actually those that were struggling with that, because they were looking in the other direction. They were looking at different tables and just not hearing that part of the conversation.
I've been surprised often how it doesn't take a huge amount. That sharing often isn't in a long statement or 24 sessions of therapy. In the men I know, it's often been actually it's happened quite quickly. It's out there. The shame disappears because it's out there, and boom, something opens up.
Yeah, because I know from my work that when men start to talk, they are brilliant at it.
Yeah, it goes quick.
Yes.
The
initial obstacle.
Yeah,
completely.
Yeah.
Interesting. So this now taking me back to the overlap between our professions, in that I know when someone starts talking, and that is really the stumbling block, because they haven't talked about really anything. Now I'm thinking of individuals where there hasn't been anything particularly traumatic or major that they're talking about, but there's been an accumulation of not talking. So it becomes this sort of cloud in front of them that they don't actually know what it's made of. They know it's a barrier. They don't really know how to affect it, a bit like punching smoke. And then they turn away from it and don't go there. When they start talking, we realise that actually, that's what it is, fine. And once that happens, they can actually then think in an aspirational way. Because they haven't got their energy diverted towards looking at this mess. It's not what they think or fear. That's easily dealt with. And so now you've got this energy. What do you want to go and do now with your life? But I'm guessing then, obviously, that with therapy there is more to that cloud.
I think so. Some people just have really, really, really got stuck, or some people's capacity to imagine a better life is just profoundly and very sadly impaired. You have to have connected with somebody or felt loved to know to believe I can be loved, I can be good at something. And some people haven't had those experiences, or had repeatedly had that smashed. And that's very hard to believe. And then believing and hoping things could be different becomes very, very painful. So it's better just to shut down and not believe. So sometimes when people are really, really stuck, trying to encourage or challenge is just very painful. It's a different type of work. But I guess that's the end I know quite well.
Yeah. I think it's really important for anyone listening to know that there is an overlap, and if you choose to start somewhere and you choose to talk to a particular professional, and it's not right, then at least you know.
Yeah.
And this is what I mean about giving the profession a chance, because you're going to come back with some answers. Just like if you go and see a physio, and that's actually not the most effective route, it is in fact to go and see a chiropractor, then at least you've tried, you've got an answer from the physio, and then you go and try the chiropractor.
Yeah.
Do you think that stands in terms of what we do?
100%.
Yeah.
I think if you're dealing with people with integrity, people who don't have a grandiose belief that they've got magical powers, and you need to come and see me because I can definitely sort you out. Avoid people with that view, because it cultivates a sense of grandiosity in the therapist and a sense of disempowerment in the person, the client. If you're avoiding that sort of person, you're having more balanced power dialogues, honest dialogues. I think you won't go wrong. You're not going to get hurt. Either parties. There'll be an honest exchange from one person to another. I genuinely want to help. These are the skill sets I've got. I think we're stuck, or I'm hearing that you stuck. Yeah, it'd be great if we can get someone else on board to help you.
Yeah. And the going back again to the kind of difficulty that men can have talking or starting that conversation, whether it's a therapy conversation or a coaching conversation or anything else. Where does the difficulty come from? And I'm talking about learned behaviour and what have been the influential factors or people. So who have they witnessed in their lives not talking, not reaching out? So role models,
I think those dialogues are massively important, but I'm going to take a chance here and say something about you. It may not come out right, so we might leave it on here, you can edit it. So I think something very primitive goes on in men seeking help from other men. I think there's a fear that if you start talking, you might collapse and be weak, you might feel shamed, you might be seen as being effeminate. I think all those really very difficult to talk about prejudices lurk around. I think, so there's a very personal comment, I think you're in a good position because you don't present in that manner. So you have both a physical presence and an emotional presence. And I think for many men, that's the starting point. Can I trust that person? Are they going to be able to hold? What kind of person am I talking to? And then you get into the other layers of where did it come from? Why did you have those prejudices? But you've got to get into the conversation first.
Yeah.
And to get in it, you have to be confronting a lot of unspoken prejudice and primitive prejudice. So I don't think I've put that clearly.
I think it's landed with me. I mean, once, probably 2 or 3 years ago, someone asked me what I did. In that, as you said before, what do you do? And I said, I'm a life coach. And I can't remember their exact words, but they said something along the lines of, I don't need a life coach. And I thought, well, no, my clients want me, and I think there's got to be that buy-in. You've got to find somebody that you connect with, in terms of integrity, in terms of professionalism, in terms of just who they are as a person, and want to go and be interested about going to work with them. And the same is true, I think, for me as a professional looking at any potential client. I've got to want to work with them. I cannot work with someone I don't want to work with.
Yes. Yes, I'm going to try to go back to this idea of overcoming prejudice or credibility. Perhaps it's around credibility. Okay. I remember I was working, I was getting supervision for somebody who had an eating disorder, and my supervisor had an eating disorder. It was very obvious that they had an eating disorder, but was also seeing patients, and I struggled and wondered how, because the therapist would know the territory very well, but demonstrably in her life was not able to effect change, and was trying to help people effect change. So could connect with the pain and the suffering, but really did not demonstrably in her life have the capacity to make change. And I wondered how her patients would have experienced that. If I was a patient struggling with my eating disorder and I was coming to you when you were still struggling with your eating disorder, if we were slipping into addictions, I want to see somebody who knows something around addictions, in whether you've had some addictions or there's been close experience, or if you've worked in a long time. If I've got addictions, I want to know you know the territory, but I also want to know you know the recovery aspect.
Yes, and be in that process.
Yeah.
Be actively in that process of working through that. So showing that you are creating change.
Yes.
That's what I think you can be on that journey.
Yeah.
Because no one is the complete article, are they?
No, but you want to know you're on the journey, as opposed to you stuck in the throes of the difficulty or the addiction.
Yes.
Or the problem.
Yes.
Yes, you know what it's like, and that's really helpful. We can connect, but I actually want to know that you're on the process, because I'm also wanting to recover.
Well, it's. I mean, yeah. If you're not on the receiving end of what your profession offers at some level, do you believe in it?
Yes. Well, I guess that's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So I want to know, coming to you as a coach, I'm looking for, on an unspoken level, a degree of emotional vulnerability, a degree of emotional intelligence, and a degree of organisation in your life. How do I think you're running your life?
Yes. Yeah. This goes back to the.
It's very primitive.
Did we mention about the builder's van? Did we talk about this?
I don't know.
So I'm not sure who it was. Someone said, if ever I hire, a tradesman, I want to look inside their van. I said, oh, do you? No, I used to be a carpenter, and my van was spick and span, like totally organised, kind of bit obsessive in terms of the organisation. It was swept out every night. It was clean. It was clean on the outside, and I think that got me, a fair amount of work.
Yeah.
I have worked for builders before when, they ask you to go to the van and get something, and you open the door and half of what's inside falls out, including like a 10-litre tub of paint. And you think, how can you, how does this translate into being wanted as that professional? So I think that's what, I'm just supporting what you're saying.
Yes.
What's your van like?
Yeah, what's your van? These things happen before you know. They happen like this. Those judgments. We talk, and this is going back to how do you find a therapist?
Yeah.
How do you find a coach?
Yeah.
You have to. There's something around that instant credibility. Can I connect? And then you explore the questions. Very primitive. Anyway,
do you? I offer like a kind of. It's referred to as a chemistry session or a sample session where I have a free conversation with somebody, and in that by the end of that conversation, and some sample coaching they'll have a yes or a no in their mind, as will I.
Yeah.
Do you do that too? I suppose it's a bit different in terms of the NHS work, is it?
Yeah. So you don't get that. You don't get that option.
Right.
Which is really sad. I think it's missing out a core process. I think you've got it right in coaching. I think that is correct to be saying, let's just let's explore. I think you do it, and therapists can tailor. So often, many NHS therapists will work in different modalities, so they are able to meet a client in a different state of their journey or a different state of mind.
Yeah.
So it might be, well, you were referred for this therapy, but you know what? I actually think this is where you're at. What do you think? I think the emphasis should be looking at your relationship patterns. I mean, that seems to me where most of your energy is going. Let's have a look at that. So I think people have the ability to shift. Therapists, experienced therapists will shift, but that, in terms of choice, it's limited.
Well, we do like to have a choice, don't we?
Yeah.
I think it's really important.
Yeah.
And then you feel a bit more at the helm of your ship.
True.
Yeah. What shall we? A feel like we can maybe round up our conversation.
Yeah,
I know we're both sort of now running out of time at the moment, which is, I think, could quite easily chat for another hour. Stuart. Yeah. One thing I wanted to demonstrate today was just to have two men talking about not only the professions but men being vulnerable. Yeah. I think we are both quite comfortable with being vulnerable. I know I find it challenging at times, but I can do it. Yeah. Especially with help, from a coach. But I wanted to demonstrate us. I wanted to have us do that today. I think we have.
Well, it's a great joy.
Yeah.
I mean, and last week we were just sitting having a conversation. Just the joy of a conversation. Yeah. It takes time. It meanders. Yeah. It's really enjoyable. But I guess what's not here is I've had lots of internal conversations over the last week or two from the conversation we had before.
Yes.
Thinking about coaching and therapies and models and.
So that's the fun.
I'm going to that's going to be somebody warning me
that you're going to be late. See, this shows an authentic recording. So Stuart's just answering the phone, but we are going to wrap it up, and we'll probably meet again and have another conversation. Yeah. But just to tell you where we are very near the beach on sandbanks. Beautiful. You can hear the seagulls in the background and the smell of barbecues firing up in the evening. It's oh, there you go.